And now, for this week's State of Trade in Star Citizen. The Intergalactic Aerospace Expo is finally over. However, trade has continued to exceed predictions. This can most likely be attributed to higher than usual sales on cargo ships during the expo, as well as dedicated players taking advantage of rentable ships to purchase vessels in-game. Commodities across the board have continued incredibly high pricing and low stock, even with the expo coming to a close. This week, Luminalia will begin in Star Citizen. The winter holiday theme will most likely tie in with small sales and events throughout the month. While not having an impact on the trade economy, it can be a fun distraction. It has now been 1 month since scrap was disabled by CIG. With no fix in sight, it may be time to write off any loads of scrap that traders are holding on to. The commodity continues to be effectively dead until further notice. And now for market data. In the metals market, Agricium sees typical movement. Agricium has a rarely seen base price of 22.50 and sells for 27.50. Around ArcCorp, Lyria's SAL2 rose to 23.86, up from last week's 23.82. In Crusader, Daymar deposits saw only minor deviation. Kudra ore rose to 24.18, up from last week's 24.09. ArcCorp 141 saw a small increase to 24.77, up from 24.64. In Microtech, SMCA8 on Calliope fell slightly to 24.79, down from a previous 24.86. Cleo's Cantwell fell to 23.71, down from last week's 23.86. Aluminum saw no notable movement, as the commodity holds little interest for traders. Aluminum has a base price of 1.11 and sells for 1.33. Prices held at base numbers across the board. Gold continues to see heavy traffic as an alternative to other commodities. Gold has a base price of 5.41 and sells for 6.41. In ArcCorp, Humboldt mines on Lyria settled back to base pricing, down from last week's minor nudge to 5.42. Around Crusader, Kudra ore on Daymar reached 5.71, up from a previous 5.68. Shubin SCD1 climbed to 5.88, up from 5.69. Around Hurston, prices saw a slight drop on Aberdeen. Norgard dipped slightly to 5.66, down from 5.70. Anderson dropped as well to 5.66, down from 5.86. In Microtech, Calliope's Caltag repeated a price of 5.89. SMO18 on the planet itself dropped to 5.57, down from a previous price of 5.80. There have been reports of SMO18 dropping to base pricing during off-peak hours. Titanium continues to see high prices. Titanium has a base price of 7.10 and a sell price of 8.90. Stock was a consistent issue as well. Around ArcCorp, Lyria's SAL2 dipped slightly to 7.97, down from a previous 7.99. SAL5 dropped to 7.95, down slightly from 7.96. Humboldt Mines followed suit at 7.94, down from 7.98. Around Crusader, Sellen's Tram & Myers climbed to 7.99, up from a previous 7.97. In Hurston, Ariel's Bezdek fell to 7.81, down from 7.88. Its sister location, Lathan, saw a low of 7.76, down from a previous 7.83. Around Microtech, Cleo's Cantwell saw 7.99, a near repeat of last week's 7.98. Tungsten continues to see movement, especially around Microtech. Tungsten has a base price of 3.55 and sells for 4.06. In ArcCorp, Walla's ArcCorp 045 fell to 3.59, down from 3.76. ArcCorp 048 repeated a price of 3.59. ArcCorp 056 fell to 3.58, down from a previous 3.75. While ArcCorp 061 held steady at a repeated 3.58. Around Crusader, Daymar's ArcCorp 141 rose slightly to 3.68, up from 3.66. Shuban SCD1 on Daymar fell slightly to 3.75, down from 3.79. Around Hurston, Ariel's Bezdek fell to 3.56, down from 3.61. Lathan repeated last week's price of 3.57. Around Microtech, Caltag on Calliope repeated a price of 3.80 once again. SMCA8 on Calliope rose to 3.80 as well, up from last week's 3.72. Legal Vice sees Distilled Spirits still experiencing heavy traffic, with only minor drops in pricing. Distilled Spirits has a base price of 4.06, with a sell price of 5.56 at major ports. In Crusader, Gillette Family Farms fell to 4.66, down from 4.71. Terra Mills on Cellin fell to 4.63, down from yet again 4.71. Bountiful Harvest fell to 4.59, down from last week's repeated 4.71. Around Microtech, Bud's Growery on Euterpe had the overall lowest price of 4.59, down slightly from 4.62. Once again, consider finding Shady Glen on Walla if you are insistent on freighting Distilled Spirits. Stims continue to see heavy movement. Stims have a base price of 2.80 and sell for 3.86 at major ports. In Crusader, Deacons on Yela cooled off heavily, dropping to 2.91, down from a record 3.24. Hicks on Cellin rose to 3.10, up from last week's price of 3 UEC. In Microtech, McGrath on Clio fell slightly to 2.94, down from a previous high of 3.04. Anvik on Calliope rose to 3.03, up from last week's 2.94. Gases follow usual trends. Astatine sees near maximum pricing across the board. Astatine has a base price of 7 and a sell price of 9 at major ports. Around ArcCorp, Walla's ArcCorp 056 repeated a price of 7.70. ArcCorp 061 had the lowest observed price of 7.63, slightly down from last week's 7.67. On Lyria, leverage fell slightly to 7.87, down from a previous 7.93. Around Crusader, Yela's ArcCorp 157 fell slightly to 7.90, a minor decrease from 7.91. Benson Mining on Yela rose slightly to 7.91, up from a previous 7.90. Around Hurston, Woodruff on Ida repeated last week's price of 7.88. Ryder fell to 7.93, down from 7.95. Both locations experienced regular supply shortages. Around Microtech, SMCA6 on Calliope fell to 7.88, down from last week's 7.95. On the planet itself, SMO10 fell to 7.76, down from 7.95. SMO22 dipped to 785, down slightly from 788. Astatine continues to see supply shortages at all locations and should be avoided by bulk haulers for the time being. Chlorine sees some notable movement. Chlorine has a base price of 1.3 and a sell price of 1.71. Around Crusader, ArcCorp 157 on Yela climbed to 1.45, up from 1.41. Benson Mining on Yela fell to 1.32, down from 1.43. For sell locations, Deacons on Yela will have the lowest sell price of all locations. Fluorine saw a slight reduction in movement. Fluorine has a base price of 2.35 and a sell price of 2.95. In Microtech, Cantwell on Clio rose to 2.37, up from last week's base pricing. While the sell price continues to falter at Deacons and Anvik, Hicks and McGrath had full sell pricing multiple times throughout the week. Hydrogen saw little movement last week. Hydrogen has a base price of 0.90 and a sell price of 1.12. all locations held to base pricing. Iodine sees no notable movement. Iodine has a base price of 0.35 and a sale price of 0.45. The commodity continues to hold little interest for traders. In the mineral market, Beryl continues to see heavy traffic. Beryl has a base price of 4.06 and a sale price of 0.35. Around Crusader, ArcCorp 141 on Daymar held to last week's pricing of 4.12 yet again. Around Microtech, Calliope's SMCA8 actually climbed to 4.14, up from last week's price of 4.11. Corundum sees reduced movement. Corundum has a base price of 2.30 and a sell price of 2.71. In Crusader, Tram & Myers on Cellin saw the price of Corundum fall slightly to 2.34, down from 2.37. All other locations returned to base pricing. Diamond sees repeat surging at all locations. Diamond has a base price of 5.85 and a sell price of 7.35. Around ArcCorp, Walla's 045 fell slightly to 6.44, down from a previous 6.50. ArcCorp 056 followed at a similar 6.46, down from 6.48. ArcCorp 048 fell to 6.23, down from 6.49. On Lyria, SAL5 rose to 6.38, up from 6.32. At Crusader, Tram & Myers fell to 6.38, down from 6.51. Hurston sees continued high prices. On Magda, Han repeated a price of 6.53. Perlman reached 6.53, up from 6.45. On the planet itself, Edmund was at 650, up from 646. Operai fell to 6.32, down from 6.54. Pinewood repeated a price of 6.42, and Thetis fell to 6.34, down from its previous 6.56. Around Microtech, Deltana on the planet itself rose to 6.41, up from 6.23. SMO13 repeated a price of 6.33. Diamond continues to be in short supply at all locations. Laranite sees expected shortages. Laranite has a rarely seen base price of 25 and a sale price of 31.01. Around ArcCorp, ArcCorp 045 on Walla fell to 27.29, down from 27.45. ArcCorp 056 on Walla rose to 27.89, up from 27.81. In Crusader, Tram & Myers rose slightly to 27.67, up from its previous 27.63. Around Hurston, Bezdek on Ariel repeats a price of 27.84. Its sister location, Lathan, fell to 27.67, down from a previous 27.82. Quartz saw minor movement yet again. Quartz has a base price of 1.25 and a sell price of 1.55. Around ArcCorp, Walla's ArcCorp 045 fell to 1.26, down from a previous 1.33. On Lyria, SAL5 repeats a minor deviation of 1.26. All other locations held to base pricing. Medical supplies continue to experience heavy demand. Medical supplies have a rarely seen base price of 15.75 and a sell price of 19.25 at major ports. Around Crusader, Deacons on Yela fell to 17.11, down from 17.35. On Cellin, Hicks reached 17.40, up from 17.34. In Microtech, Anvik on Calliope climbed to 17.28, up from 17.13. On Clio, McGrath soared to 17.40, up from a previous 17.28. Processed food sees increased movement, yet prices have held firm. Processed food has a base price of 1.21 and a sell price of 1.56. Scrap is still unavailable for trade. Scrap has a base price of 1.35 and a sell price of 1.85. Until CIG rolls back their previous hotfix, scrap cannot be sold at any location in-game. Do not purchase scrap until further notice. Agricultural supplies saw increased movement. Agricultural supplies have a base price of 1 with a sell price of 1.20. Around Crusader, Deacons on Yela fell to 1.01, down from 1.05. On Selen, Hicks sees an increase to 1.03, up from 1.01. Agricultural supplies experienced regular supply shortages at Hicks Research. And now, for next week's forecast. Even with the IAE over, expect a repeat of last week's trends. Gold around Aberdeen will continue to be high. SMO 18 will see high pricing during peak times. Mixed cargoes will fare best as staple commodities will continue to see near maximum pricing and repeated supply shortages. And now for this week's trading tip. With the economy shared across all servers, consider when players are on the most when you go to trade. With the bulk of players playing in European time zones, consider attempting to trade when the majority of those players may be sleeping, at work, or at school. While not feasible for every player, attempting to trade during off-peak hours can maximize both supply and profit where applicable. That's it for this week's State of Trade. Until next time, keep on trucking.